So now we're going to talk about ICD-9. And I have my 2013 already. And let's see, so this is probably the last, no, we'll probably have one for 2014. Then October of 2014, we'll be switching to ICD-10. All right, so 2 more years. Now, a lot of people are like, well, should I even bother to take the exam, or should I just wait until ICD-10 comes out? And my feeling is this: the guidelines are the guidelines. They are not changing that much for ICD-10. It's the format of the codes that are changing, and it is a big change. But you still need to know how to use the index right, how to be led by the instructions if it tells you to code also or code first. All of that's going to remain the same, but they are different codes because it's a different structure. So don't feel like you're wasting your time learning and understanding and mastering ICD-9, because all the guidelines apply. Okay? Now, there are, for the CPC exam, volumes 1 and 2 are what we're going to be using. There's actually a 3rd volume for inpatient hospital coders, and that's actually what they use for procedures. They don't use CPT. They use ICD volume 3. All right, so just as a general knowledge question, just know that there's 3 volumes, okay? And back in the day, they literally had 3 bound volumes on the bookshelf. And when they were going to code a diagnosis code, they would start with volume 2, which was the index, which, if you think of most books that have an index, the index is in the back, right? And it helps you to find information in the front of the book. So it was the same way with ICD. Volume 2 is the index. What would invariably happen, though, is the index is pretty good, and it would point them to a code, and they would just use that, and they'd stop. And they wouldn't go verify in volume 1, which is the tabular, which now we know with the code to the highest level of specificity, we need to do both steps. We need to start with volume 2, the index, and go to volume 1, the tabular. Now, a personal pet peeve of mine is that the publishers, I think they just want to do something new every year. So check your publisher. What do you have first? Which shows up first, volume 2 or volume 1? Does your index show up first, or do the where the codes live show up first? Yeah. So now we have to train our brain that volume 2 comes first, then volume 1. Because God forbid they ask you a general question, how many volumes of ICD are there? Which one, you know, you could get it wrong if you're just thinking that it goes in logical order, volume 1, then volume 2. Like, we couldn't figure out to use the back of the book to go to the front like every other book in the library. No, they had to switch it on us. So at any rate, so be aware of that. So I will say index and tabular, or alpha index and tabular. I tend to say where the codes live is for the tabular. Okay, because the goal is to get there and confirm. Okay, so be aware there's 2 volumes. Now, so volume 1, which is in the back of your book, where the codes live, are 17 chapters based pretty much on, they start with infectious diseases and it goes through all the organ systems, digestive, mental health codes, ends with injury for chapter 17 and signs and symptoms. Then there's a V code chapter and an E code chapter. Okay. And then it ends with the appendices. There's 5 key appendices. Now, I don't know about yours, but mine does not have a table of contents. It's just all mashed together. So of all the books that you probably want to tab, ICD is the main one. All right? I wouldn't tab where all the chapters start. It doesn't matter, because again, on the board exam, your job is what? To look up the best of the possible answers. So you're going to look up the codes, and so you're going to want to flip. So you don't really want to put tabs on the side of your book. You're just going to flip to the numerical order to get there. It doesn't matter what chapter. You're not going to go, okay, that's a chapter 15 code. Let me go to chapter. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to flip and get to the code number. Okay, so it's really not necessary to do that. I would tab where the V codes start and where the E codes start, because sometimes you do need to get there separately and quickly. And then volume 2 is the index. That's now usually in the front of the book. And there's actually 3 sections to volume 2. And I would tab those as well. The index to diseases, which is basically where we look up things, headache, etc. Then in the middle, there's the table of drugs and chemicals. And then the third section is index to E-codes. A lot of coders, even experienced coders, did not realize that the E-codes had their own index. And sometimes if they were just flipping, they would accidentally get in the E-code index, and they're like, wait a minute, where am I? This doesn't look familiar. And they'd like close the book and start again. Okay, now I'm, and that's what was happening. I personally am not a fan of the E-code index because I don't feel like they use words that we use in everyday life. For example, if someone's had an accident on their bike, what do they say? Pedal cyclist. Like we're gonna, oh, I know, pedal cyclist. We're gonna be looking at bike, bicycle. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a tip for that in a minute.
Get more CPC exam tips, coding certification training, and CEU credits. Go to www.codingcertification.org.